Tantor Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents A Fly in a Pail of Milk, the Herb Carnegie story, by Herb Carnegie with Bernice Carnegie. Narrated by Leon Nixon and Adenrele Ojo. Forward, by Jean Beliveau. In his book, A Fly in a Pail of Milk, Herb Carnegie pulls no punches about how this title evolved. In the 1940s, I had never seen a colored player. That was the expression at that time, in top-notch senior hockey in the Quebec senior leagues, provincial or QSHL. However, one night, that all changed dramatically. The Victoriaville Tiger Rink is filled to capacity, anticipating the arrival of the much-publicized, one and only all-colored line, skating for the Sherbrooke Randies and in the Quebec Provincial League, 1946 to 47. At center, number 7, Herbie Carnegie, his brother Ozzie, number 10, at right wing, and at left wing, number 11, was Manny McIntyre. They filled rinks and thrilled the fans in Drummondville, St. Hyacinthe, Cornwall, Lachine, and Sherbrooke. In the mid to late 40s, sports writers varied their headlines. The Brown Bombers, the famous Colored Line, the Ink Spots, the Dark Destroyers, and more. Little did I know that within 4 years, Herbie Carnegie, in the sunset of his career, and I would share Coach Punch Imlock's Quebec Aces dressing room for 2 splendid years, 1951 to 1953, and would revel in the euphoria of winning the Lord Alexander Trophy, emblematic of the Eastern Championship of Canada in 1953. While I was still playing in the Quebec Junior League, Herbie was winning 3 consecutive Most Valuable Player awards with the Sherbrooke Saints in 1947, 48, and 49. He was a smooth skating player, equally adept at center or on a wing. Herbie certainly had the talent and was very popular with the fans, who would reward his great playmaking with prolonged standing ovations both at home and on the road. Perhaps they suspected that his color was an issue with the NHL, but it certainly wasn't with them. It's my belief that Herbie Carnegie was excluded from the National Hockey League because of his color. How could the NHL scouts overlook not 1, but 3 Most Valuable Player awards for a player on a team in a top senior league? Over the years, I followed Herbie from a distance. He did very well with Investors Syndicate, now the Investors Group, as I could see as a board member of the company. As well, I heard from mutual acquaintances that he was a major contributor to public service, primarily in the city of North York, bordering the northern boundary of Toronto, Ontario. Herbie has been featured in 2 Spider-Man comic books, namely Skating on Thin Ice and Double Trouble, and he has received the Queen's Jubilee Medal, Ontario Medal for Good Citizenship, and the 125th Canada Medal, as well as the recent honorary life membership at the Summit Golf and Country Club. While each award is highly cherished, I've learned that Herbie Carnegie's greatest achievement is having his future Aces philosophy adopted by the City of North York Board of Education, where it hangs proudly in the hallways and classrooms. From the ponds of North York to the classroom, A Fly in a Pail of Milk tells a compelling story of rejection and victory. Jean Beliveau. Part 1. A Fly in a Pail of Milk. Chapter 1. Fields of Willowdale. Nigger, go back where you came from. This racial slur is my earliest childhood memory. I can't even remember who taunted me with it. Probably a playmate. But at the age of 4 or 5, I can vividly remember the pain it inflicted. Although mine was the only colored family in a white neighborhood, I had no idea what nigger meant. But whatever it meant, I could feel by the sound of the voice that the intention was hurtful. Fortunately, I was born stubborn. It's said to be a character trait of Scorpios. So I'm sure that I fought back and spoke with my fists. In 1919, the year of my birth, Sir Wilfrid Laurier died and was succeeded as leader of the Liberal Party by William Lyon Mackenzie King. I was born on November 8th, in my family's home on Federal Street in Toronto's west side. I was the fifth of 7 children. My sisters were Ethel, Bernice, and Lillian. My brothers were Eric, Ozzie, and Ross. Herbert Carnegie, son of Jamaican immigrants, was not born into a warm and cuddly world. Colored babies were not a welcome sight to most Canadians. White males, mostly from British stock, occupied the top rung of the country's social order. All others were promptly put in their place if they challenged the hierarchy. As much as many Canadians like to believe in fantasy, jobs and social position were rarely dispensed on the basis of qualifications. In 1919, Toronto was a thriving commercial city of over 200,000. Yonge Street and the Danforth were already main thoroughfares, and streetcars were the popular mode of transport. I remember nothing about our house because when I was 2 months old, we moved to Willowdale, North York, on the northern boundary of Toronto. Willowdale was rural. When we moved there in the winter of 1919 to 20, houses had no numbers. Why would they have? With one house here and another a quarter mile away, numbers were just not needed. Instead, houses were known by the name of the family that lived in them. The Hazelhursts, the Williams, and the Bellamys were among our closest neighbors. Carnegie home, now only a memory, was located approximately at what is now 369 Parkview Avenue in the city of North York. My parents, Mama and Papa as we call them, were George Nathaniel Carnegie and Adina Jane Mitchell from Manchester Parish. They had come separately from Jamaica to Toronto in 1912, the same year the supposedly unsinkable Titanic shocked the world by striking an iceberg off the coast of Newfoundland and dragging more than 1,500 passengers to their watery graves. I don't know the precise circumstances of my parents' arrivals. It just wasn't talked about much. I know my father hailed from Mile Gully, a rural hamlet in the Mandeville area of central Jamaica, and that he sailed on a passenger ship to New York, then made his way to Toronto. If they ever said why, I don't remember. I assume their reasons weren't that different from many of today's immigrants. They were simply seeking a better life. My father, a light-skinned man of the soil, worked as a janitor for the Toronto Hydro Commission from 1912 until 1954. Papa loved his job as much as a poke in the eye with a sharp stick. But with only a grade 4 education, his options in life were limited. The horizons of some colored men fell significantly short of those of their white counterparts. Colored men worked mostly as porters and chauffeurs and occasionally as nightclub entertainers and boxers. Children often view their parents from the standpoint of discipline. Papa was the disciplinarian. He was the boss. He'd play with us, but I don't immediately think of the fun times with him, even though there were lots of them. Although he stood only 5'5", his baritone voice and barrel chest made him seem a foot taller. Because we valued our lives, we never challenged his advice and opinions. Papa hated his mundane job, but he was forced to stick with it because he had a large family to support. Frustrated by his own lack of education, he feared that his children might be trapped in the same position he found himself. While we were having fun, he lived in the world beyond, where race mattered. And that reality and that fear explained his regular, almost daily exhortations to us. Stay in school, get a good education. Occasionally, he'd be more dramatic. He'd rise from the dinner table, reach for the broom, and toss it at whichever of his children he wanted to impress. Here, he would half shout. This is what the boss will give you if you don't get an education. Papa's theatrics were so effective on me. I used them later in life with my own kids. My mother filled the then traditional role of housewife and saw to it that her husband and children were well fed, clothed, and loved. Mama was warm and sensitive. I remember being whacked by her on only one occasion. I loved to take a running leap onto the Chesterfield. This time, just as I reached the apex of my trajectory onto the cushions, I realized Lillian, my baby sister, was resting between me and them. Her stomach took the impact, and, naturally, she wailed like the baby she was. By the time Mama finished warming my behind, I was wailing too. She was a devout Baptist who provided our family with our moral compass. Mama didn't permit swear words, and I don't remember ever hearing Papa swear. I went to Willowdale Baptist Church, my mother's church, until about the age of 13. The congregation there was totally white. We were the only colored family in the late 1920s and early 1930s. Many a Sunday morning, fresh from services, I would reduce my sister Bernice to fits of giggles with an imitation of our pastor, the Reverend Pierce. "Now is the hour," I would boom in my best Baptist preacher's voice. "You got to be saved, brothers and sisters. There's no time like now. Don't wait for tomorrow. Come give your life to Christ." Mama, a more respectful worshiper, was of two minds about my talent. I think she smiled on the inside because, after all, everyone else was on our living room floor laughing. Still, another part of her viewed it as sacrilege. "Now, Herb," she would scold gently. I'd cut her off in my thundering preacher's voice. "But, Mama, now is the hour." On Sundays, we just sit around with our shiny shoes on, and in the evening, listen to Oswald Smith's church service on the radio. We respected Mama and her faith, and to some degree we took it on for a while. A warm and loving woman with a powerful contralto voice, she often mesmerized the rest of us with renditions of her favorite songs. I remember "The Old Rugged Cross," "Jesus, Savior, Pilot Me," "Rock of Ages," and "When the Roll is Called Up Yonder, I'll Be There." And I have no doubt that she is. My parents made no effort to acculture us in any manner, nor did Papa have any contact with Toronto's colored community or any of its institutions. He was too busy looking after his family, his garden, and his animals. He was a family man, and these were his loves. My parents belonged to no organizations, besides Mama's church, whatsoever. I remember no newspapers or magazines pertaining to the colored community. My parents were concerned with making it economically in Canada and focused on where they were, their family, and providing the best that they could for their children. We ate mostly Canadian food because we relied on what could be grown in the garden. I heard my parents speak of mangoes, for instance, but there was no conscious effort to cook Jamaican foods. Papa talked occasionally about his early days in Jamaica, fetching cows and milking them before walking 2 or 3 miles to school. He claimed his childhood was tough. This, perhaps, is one of the reasons why he quit school and took off for Canada. And I'm glad he did. For a period of time, he corresponded with his sister and a cousin in Jamaica, but they eventually lost contact. If he had any inner yearning to return, he never expressed it. While Mama never returned to Jamaica, Papa did, in the late 1950s or early 1960s. He had always wanted to escape winter, and when Mama died, he returned to Jamaica where he found his second wife, Mary. He promised her that if she grew lonesome for home, they would return, and after a few years in Canada, they went back to enjoy their senior years in Mandeville, Jamaica. Our Parkview Avenue house was little better than a shack, with a dark flat roof and white and green trimmed windows. It stood on an acre of fertile land with an elm tree at the back where Papa fashioned a swing by attaching a rope and an old car tire to a branch. That's where we played, fought, and acted like the kids we were. Just beyond the elm tree, he planted a garden of corn, carrots, celery, cabbages, beets, onions, potatoes, parsley, and more. Papa loved flowers and gardening. Our hedge was always exquisitely trimmed, and anyone walking within 100 yards of our home was sure to smell the sweet aroma of peonies, tulips, gladioli, and other assorted flowers. As I write, those country smells are almost as vivid as they were back then. Each of us had daily chores, and mine was to weed the garden. Years later, I would be promoted to the milker of the cows we kept. And yes, this menagerie also included cats, dogs, geese, ducks, chickens, pigs, and even mice and rats. Empress Quagmire. It was 1924. As Farmer Hill's Clydesdale horses ambled along the rough road, I watched the soft snowflakes fall, concealing our sleigh tracks and erasing, for a brief moment, memories of my loving shack of a home. With his arms around me, Papa and I sat on the back right side of the sleigh. In a short while, 215 Empress Avenue, a mere few blocks away, would be my new home. It was one of only a few homes on the street, which today is lined with single-family homes and manicured lawns. Urban sprawl has now caught up to Empress Avenue, but back then it was surrounded by farm fields. The street looked much like those dusty roads you see in Western movies, when a stagecoach leaves a brownish-yellow cloud in its wake. In summer it was splendid to see the mature trees form a perfect archway down the street, as though they were trying to hang out with us kids as we lazed about in brilliant sunshine and breathed in the fresh country air. When it rained, cars would carve deep ruts into the muddy clay. As kids, of course, we loved walking through the puddles in bare feet, the mud squishing between our toes. I can still feel the sensation all these years later. I remember the cars and the delivery trucks. T. Eaton Company, Robert Simpson Company, North York Dairy, Silverwood's Dairy. As good as these drivers were, none of them conquered the quagmire of the Willowdale and Empress intersection. From our veranda, I had a front row seat to the driver's impassable dilemma. Their frustration was fun to me. The mud and water flew in all directions because the frames of the cars and trucks hung between the deep ruts, leaving the wheels suspended without traction. Eventually, the township grader came to the rescue. Other times it was our neighbors, the Hill brothers, who'd provide relief for the beleaguered drivers. I remember, too, the slogan of Silverwood's, "You can't beat our milk, but you can whip our cream." Young Street was a two-lane highway with trolley car tracks alongside. They ran from the city limits, Hogs Hollow, north to Richmond Hill. For passengers, riding the trolley down that steep incline was as thrilling as the roller coaster at the CNE, and the wickerwork, high-back, heavy straw-like seats provided newcomers with a sensational ride. At Stop 1, passengers embarked and disembarked at the Jolly Miller Hotel. Empress Avenue was Stop 7A. Often I'd take my wagon and meet Papa there to help him with goodies, newspapers, or anything he brought home from work. Galbraith's hardware store at Young Street and Hillcrest Avenue was another popular place. The Dempsey brothers ran a hardware store on the northwest corner of Young Street and Shepherd Avenue. It has since been moved to Beecroft and Ellerslie Avenues. These stores were special for a kid like me. Hockey sticks were sold for 25 cents to $1.25, and of course, after spending 2 bits, 25 cents, I tried to nurture my stick for as long as I could. At Spring Garden in Young, north of Shepherd, a man named Nelson operated a confectionery. Eventually his son Roy took over and ran it until the late 1980s. A skyscraper resides there now. Just recently I attended Roy and Margaret's 50th wedding anniversary. We have been friends for years. I recall on Young Street, north of Hogs Hollow, small planes landed and took off from a field to the west side of the road, close to what is now Mel Lastman Square. Sundays were an especially busy time. If you had the cash, a pilot would take you for a 3 to 5 minute ride. Near that same property, a National Housing Association sign advertised homes at Parkholme Avenue, west from Young Street, for under $2,000, with monthly payments of less than $20. I still wonder who, in 1936, had the money to purchase these 4-roomed, framed bungalows with rock-faced 12-inch concrete block basements. I also remember the golf driving range when Matt Brown was the pro near the same location. Huge floodlights almost turned the night into day. One night my brother Ozzie and Charlie Conacher, the Toronto Maple Leafs hockey star, had a great time trying to outdrive each other. With the lights illuminating the balls against the dark sky, the balls appeared as if they were in Technicolor. Gasoline at the Sunoco station on the corner of Young Street and Princess Avenue sold for 13 cents a gallon in 1935. The trolley car, which took on and dropped off passengers at the Jolly Miller, cost 5 cents for a ride north of the city limits. For the same price, you could get a 3-decker ice cream cone or a chocolate bar. O. Henry, and Sweet Marie were my favorites. I didn't understand high finance, but my parents had obviously saved enough money to build our house, which remained standing until 1992. By comparison to our Parkview abode, it was a castle, a spacious, two-story, red brick dwelling that lacked the chilly drafts and cramped quarters of our former home. I loved the large veranda the most. Only 2 houses in the neighborhood had them: the Beatles, the builder of our house, and the Carnegies. It gave me ample room to run, and it offered challenges too, such as climbing over the banister and dropping 4 or 5 feet to the ground. I also loved running up and down the stairs, despite the repeated warnings to stop running. This kid, however, was always in a hurry. My parents' bedroom on the 2nd floor overlooked the backyard. From it, they could watch us play hockey on the adjacent pond. The top floor front east and front west bedrooms housed Eric, Ozzie, and me in the former, and Ethel, Bernice, and Lillian in the latter. Later, Ross joined the boys in the east room, making it a foursome. I can see the living room now. The beautiful red rug and the open brick fireplace with its long gumwood mantel. For years it displayed the trophies, medals, and ribbons won by my brothers and sisters and myself. The living room was my parents' sanctuary. Nobody entered it with dirty shoes or working clothes. The oak floors always shone as if they had just been polished. The adjoining dining room overlooked the garden that displayed fruit trees, pear, apple, peach, and plum, and grapevines. Gooseberries, raspberries, and strawberries also flourished there. My favorite breakfast was strawberries with cream and brown toast. The one large bathroom served all members of the family. In those days, outhouses were still common to most homes, including ours. Septic tanks were the new technology in rural areas, complete with weeping tile beds. Papa's practice was, when possible, to use the outside facilities, thereby prolonging the life of the septic tank and the weeping tile. After helping clean the septic tank and the tile, I understood Papa's justification for what seemed as a weird order to go outside. The entire process was messy, and the smell was definitely unbearable. Papa knew all about that. The Hill brothers plowed our land. Invariably, I'd walk behind them. Somehow it felt great to watch the furrows turning over the rich brown soil. First the plow went through, then the disc to cut up the furrows, followed by the harrow, an iron thing about 5 feet wide, pulled by horses. The idea was to prepare the soil for the seeds that would eventually yield all those wondrous vegetables from our garden. On the downside, I wasn't particularly fond of being too close to the hind end of horses when they relieved themselves, without so much as an excuse me. The entire process gave me an appreciation for Mother Nature and her message: give me your seed and I will return to you what you need. Papa planted more vegetables than we needed. We even sold some to neighbors, along with milk and eggs. By the time I was 11 or 12, my chores included cleaning the stables, spraying the fruit trees, and milking. Squirting milk on other kids seemed fun, at least to me. I was reminded, however, what it was like to be on the receiving end by a childhood friend, Stuart McClellan, when we met again in the 1980s at Dr. Bet Stevenson's golf tournament at the Bayview Country Club. I didn't recognize him, but, like a fly in a pail of milk, I was recognizable to him. We had a great time, reminiscing about days long past, roaming the fields, finding birds' nests, picking strawberries, and scorching the fields. Papa taught me to wean the heifers and bullocks born on our farm. While holding the animal's head in a pail of milk, I'd stick my finger into its mouth while it drank, fooling it into thinking my finger was its mother's teat. I still remember the sensation. The tongue was sandpaper rough, but wetter, and I remember the nip they'd give me when their teeth grew. I now see the chicks, ducklings, and goslings, the piglets, heifers, and bullocks were mine. They were my babies and my friends. Perhaps I loved them more because they couldn't call me nigger or snowball. Sometimes I'd become acquainted with them when they were only minutes old and their dependency on me paralleled a human's need for care and nurturing. The toughest part came when we either sold or slaughtered these animals. I would grow fond of them and saw them as pets. Each had their own personality, and parting with them was traumatic. Even now as I write, a touch of nostalgia pricks my conscience. I hate destroying life. To this day, I will let an ant roam about our picnic table and devour my wife's cake rather than kill it. The mischievous part of me came to the fore when I played hide-and-seek with Papa's geese. The idea was to wait until the geese were up on the hill, away from their house. Then I'd sneak into it and search frantically under the straw until I'd find a warm egg. With great excitement, I'd grab one that was about 1.5 times the size of a hen's egg. Then I'd make a squawking sound as I ran back to my house. The geese would panic and dart back to the goose house while I watched in safety from behind the window. It worked every time. They'd be hissing, which I took to be goose talk for, "Wait till we get you, fella." Boy, I drove those geese crazy. This was, of course, a dangerous mission. The gander was vicious, and the thought of being bitten or wing-whipped by him left me fearful. Yet each day I'd return to search for more eggs and chance another confrontation. Only in hindsight did I realize these were times of depression for the world. I had, however, no inkling at the time because things on the Carnegie homestead were just fine, thank you. The garden, the cows, and the hens gave us more food than we could eat, and Mama always seemed to find the clean clothes we needed for school. We were fortunate to have the family we had, the house we lived in, and the things we enjoyed. As a child, I was a fighter, and, strange as it may seem, my toughest opponent was my sister, Bernice. First, she had a weight advantage on me. Secondly, she used it to her advantage at crucial stages of our many wrestling matches. She would sit on me until I proclaimed my love for her or yelled uncle. As the former was my quickest route to freedom, I would dutifully express my love, then retract it as soon as she was off of me. In spite of our feuds, Bernice and I were close. I gave as good as I got, and the fact remains she is still a constant in most of my childhood memories. The mornings we attacked the snowdrifts on the way to school, the mornings we skated, and the mornings when Mr. Bellamy, our kindly neighbor, offered us a ride to school on his horse-drawn milk wagon or sleigh. I recall one bitterly cold day when, as preschoolers, we decided to go looking for Mama who, for reasons that escaped us, seemed AWOL. Bernice decided Mama had been missing long enough, and we should look for her. Before setting out, however, she made sure I was dressed appropriately with a snowsuit, scarf, and hat. To me, this was undeniable proof of her love. Fighting for respect. My fights came from being called Rastas, coon, or nigger. I was only 5 when we moved into 215 Empress and 17 when we left. From 1924 to 1936, Empress Avenue was my training ground. My home life was like a free ride on the stage of life. Let me explain. As the 5th child, I was sheltered to some extent from the harshness of the real world. Ethel, Eric, Ozzie, and Bernice ran interference for me, somewhat akin to a running back carrying a football while his fellow players blocked the opposition from tackling him. Battling racism was, and is, the villain, and my brothers and sisters interceded in those conflicts that could not be resolved by my fists. As colored kids, we were put down nearly every day by name-calling. It came to all of us as a family. There may have been 2 or 3 different battles in a day. We may have come home with a scratch, a puffy eye, or a bruised lip, and there was always a story behind it. Name-calling was general. Within a week, there would be 6 or 7 flare-ups, and I usually would respond with my fists, or at least any time I could. My parents wanted us to fend for ourselves, but encouraged us to stay out of trouble. I didn't know anyone in the colored community who didn't think you had to stand up for yourself. In our time, it was necessary to have the courage to stand up for what you felt was right. My parents' essential philosophy was that you had to earn respect. I remember one day saying to Mama that I had seen Mary, one of our neighbors, who had not said hello to me. Mama said,
Sample complete. Ready to continue?